Right, the recording has started, Chair.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee. Before we start, we just need to go through a little bit of housekeeping. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future use. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function if a participant raises their hand via the function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn the camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the chair and/or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard or seen when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chair or Democratic Officer know. Okay, thank you. As I said, this is Homes and Safe Community Scrutiny Committee. It is the 8th of February 2023. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Chair, I have one from Councillor Buckley. I'm not sure if there's any others. I think we might have a full complement of members tonight, but I'll just double check if there are any other apologies.
Okay, thank you. I can't see anybody raising their hand, or I guess there's no extra apologies. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July 2023. Is committee happy with these minutes, or are there any adjustments needed, anything like that?
Chair, I think it was January, not July.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm happy to accept the minutes.
COVID brain, sorry. 9th of January 2023 it was, yes. So
I'll second, Chair.
I was just going to ask for a seconder, thank you. All right, agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Do we have any?
Yes, sorry, I think William Hennessy, Councillor Hennessy was before me.
Okay, Councillor Hennessy, if you would like
I'd like to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in agenda items 8, 11A, in that I am a council tenant, but I have exemption under the Members' Code of Conduct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Aviett.
Same for me. I would like to declare an interest in the HRA revenue HRA business plan, and as I'm a council tenant, and it's personal but not prejudicial interest.
Okay,
thank you.
Chair, can I just double check with Councillor Hennessy? Was it just item number 11 or item number 8 as well?
And number 8 as well, please, Mark.
Okay. For number 8, is that the same reason or a different reason for?
Same reason.
But Chair, okay. And obviously with that, it's just to confirm, Councillor, it's a personal, not a prejudicial interest with the tenant.
Sorry.
So what it means for yourself is that obviously you've declared it now, but you can still participate in the meeting. You don't have to leave when that item comes up.
I was going to double check on the prejudicial interest part of it, so thank you very much, Mark, for that clarification.
No problem, Chair.
My fault, sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right, agenda item 4 is the Gypsy Traveller Accommodation Assessment. It went to Cabinet on the 19th of January 2023. Okay, Nick, if you'd like to go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. As the Chair just said, this is a report that's a referral from Cabinet, and it's to consider and agree, hopefully, the Gypsy Traveller Accommodation Assessment in order for it to be submitted to the Welsh Government. Just by way of context, really, for members, under Part 3 of the Housing Act 2014, it's a legal requirement for local authorities across Wales to undertake a Gypsy Traveller Accommodation Assessment to identify the need for sites and pitches in their area. There is a prescribed methodology for undertaking these assessments, and the understanding of need that is generated through the study is built up through a combination of things, really, including the desk-based research, stakeholder engagement, and also, quite importantly, engagement with members of the Gypsy Traveller community. The GTAA, as I'll call it, that's the Gypsy Traveller Accommodation Assessment. So the GTAA was undertaken on our behalf by a consultant, Opinion Research Services, based in Swansea, and was overseen by a steering group of staff and partner agencies. Unfortunately, it was not possible to get a member of the Gypsy Traveller community to sit on the group. That's recognised as good practice, but that wasn't possible. So the steering group was mainly professionals. And in the report, I think it lists the membership of the group and their organisations as well. The GTAA has flagged up a need for 9 additional pitches to 2026 and a further 2 pitches to 2036. That's made up of, at the moment, we've got 4 unauthorised pitches, 1 at Tunarodin and 3 at Brocastle Quarry, which is alongside the A48 at Crackhill. There was a bricks and mortar, a household currently living in bricks and mortar accommodation as well, who identified as Gypsy Traveller community, who had expressed to researchers that they would prefer to live on a site in future. So they were also part of that 9 identified need. And the remaining 4 were what we would call a rising need. That's children, people who are children at the moment who are likely to become, or who will become adults shortly. So the arising figure of 4 came from the people who existed on the existing site at Brocastle Quarry. In line with the Welsh Government methodology, the travellers at Hayes Road in Surrey were excluded from unmet need, and the reason for that was that they'd occupied that current site for 10 years and planning enforcement action was no longer possible. Planning matters are currently being considered in respect of some of the unauthorised sites, namely Brocastle Quarry and Tunarodin, and if planning permission is granted in future, that would offset that figure of identified need, that figure of 9. There's also the potential to expand the Brocastle site to accommodate more pitches for newly forming households on that site, and that would further reduce the identified need in future. Within the assessment, there was no requirement for a transit site identified. And yeah, in terms of the assessment itself, it needs to be agreed by the council to be submitted to Welsh Government, and it'll be for this is an important point really for members to note. It will be for the LDP to set out how that identified need is met. This document is purely based on identifying the required need over the next to 2036, the expiry of the LDP period. Okay, so Chair, hopefully that's useful. If anyone had any questions, happy to come back on and clarify any specifics in the report, which is attached to the cover report, the detailed report from ORS.
Okay, thank you. Marcus, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to what Nick has said, and obviously Nick has referenced the local development plan and the review of the local development plan, this report will actually form a very important piece of information in the consideration of that plan, and will be included in the assessment of the need as Nick has outlined. 2 of the sites, as Nick has mentioned, are actually, one is the subject of an expired planning permission and one is the subject of a current planning permission. So the situation may actually change before the LDP is fully reviewed, but those matters will be kept under consideration as part of the LDP process, or the review of the LDP process. So just to say that this is just a really important piece of information in the review of the local development plan.
Thank you, Marcus. Okay, Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to thank the officers for this report. It's a very thorough report. And just seeking clarification on the engagement with the with the various groups of Roma, Gypsy and Travellers. Am I right in stating that you've looked at all different avenues of exploring engagement to try and sort of build a conversation? Because I note from the report that you've sort of looked at different sort of routes in order to sort of engage with those communities. But despite your best efforts, there's been little engagement from certain groups at this point. Would that be a correct assessment, Nick?
Yeah, it would, Councillor. We 7 interviews with 7 households were completed to inform the study. Attempts were made to contact everybody we were aware of, including the residents at the Hayes Road site. And we actually worked with an organisation called Gypsy Traveller Wales to try and, as a liaison really, to help us try and facilitate access to people on the site. Initially, they refused to fill in surveys, but then they said that they would fill in a postal survey. Their preference was, rather than being interviewed by a field worker, to self-complete the survey. So 17 copies of the survey were delivered to site. We had 2 back, or we had some back. Basically, some people were saying, the majority of people, I think it was 10 people, were saying that they didn't have confidence in the process. They weren't prepared to engage with us and provide information about themselves and their accommodation needs. There was 1 survey completed, however, off that site by a couple who were occupying one of the pitches. So yeah, attempts were made to contact everybody we could identify. We did manage to speak to 7 households, and where there were difficulties, we did liaise with sort of Gypsy Traveller representative groups, really, to try and get that engagement. So yeah, it was quite tricky, but we did manage to speak to several people, which was helpful.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nick, for the presentation. 2 questions, if I may, please. The first one, I appreciate there have been consultations, or at least attempted consultations, with people from the Gypsy and Traveller community living on those sites. Or I was just wondering what consultation has been undertaken with residents living in the localities of those areas, because I'm conscious that previously sites have been brought forward by this authority, and then there has been a large scale or a large amount of concern expressed by local residents living in the vicinity. And I think, with hindsight, probably those sites then turned out not to be suitable for the intended purpose. And the second question is just a broad question, really, and I'd be grateful if you could provide an update or insight into security on these sites, because I'm conscious that when such sites are developed, there does tend to be a lot of concern among residents living nearby, and I think it's important that proper measures are put in place on that to ensure that basically you don't end up with unrest or disagreement as a result of what can be quite a sensitive issue.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Carroll. In terms of the GTAA, just to clarify, this is a specific piece of work aimed at identifying the needs of Gypsy Traveller community specifically. So the methodology and the approach taken is very much just to identify members of that community and speak to them directly wherever possible. We do undertake broader housing needs studies to assess the needs of broader population in the Vale Organ, but it's been identified that the Gypsy Traveller community specifically are quite hard to engage, and their needs don't become apparent through the course of those more general housing needs surveys. So in terms of the specificity of your question, we did do some engagement with stakeholders. So we did write out to members and also members of community councils, but the main focus and emphasis was to talk to members of the Gypsy Traveller community rather than the broader public to assess their needs. In terms of the second point you raise in terms of security is not featured in this report because the report is on the needs identified. But you know, there are several sites across the Vale, as you will have noted in the report. There isn't specific security arrangements. They're mainly smaller sites spread in different locations. And you know, you may well be aware on the Hayes Road site that there is a gate which is locked there, but there's no security arrangements which are put in place by the local authority.
Could I just come back on one point there, please, Chair? Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the purpose of this consultation. Just could we have some assurances then that once this piece of work is completed and sites are identified, there will then be a full consultation process on those proposed sites so that wider residents can have a say? Because I think it's the last thing you want with something like this would be for residents to feel that something is being imposed on an area without their own input. And I'm being very careful with the language I use because I'm conscious that it can be quite a tense situation and there can be quite unpleasant scenes and comments made if we're not careful. That said, I think it's important that residents of those areas are placed at the forefront of the decision-making process on this. Otherwise, you're going to get that situation, which I'm sure you will be trying to avoid.
Yeah, Councillor, the site identification process will be picked up in the LDP. And I can see Marcus has got his hand up, so you know he may want to come in and clarify in more specific detail, really, the consultation elements of that LDP process.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nick. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that obviously this report and this study feeds into the local development plan review.
Right.
That is where the need and the allocation will be considered going forward. As part of that, if a site is allocated, you would then have a full process around the local development plan where residents could get involved in that process and make comments. And obviously beyond that, if planning permission is sought, then clearly through the planning process, there will be a way of residents being involved in the process again. So it's fair to say that this is not the mechanism, this report is not the mechanism through which that would happen. It is in fact the local development plan and the planning process that will go beyond that, just to clarify.
Yeah, I think it's important that that's emphasised, otherwise there could be some residents of these areas see those areas cited in this report and then don't feel they've been consulted. It's important it's made clear to them that they will have the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
You have to bear with me because, like Millie, my voice is going as well. Yeah, when I read the report, I was a little bit taken aback by the name of it because I've always seen gypsy as an offensive term. So obviously that's not my decision to make. That's you know, people coming from that culture, that's their decision to make if they see that as an offensive term. But I think if you don't have people from that culture as well taking part in this study, maybe that might be why. Maybe they saw, you know, the name of it and didn't want to get involved in something that they potentially saw as, you know, something they didn't identify with. So I don't know where the name has come from this. I don't know if this has come from the Welsh Government, but I've always seen gypsy as potentially offensive. So I don't know if maybe that's something to look at in the future. Just a thought.
Okay, Councillor, yeah, I'm not aware of it being sort of regarded as an offensive term. You know, if that's something that can be looked at. But in terms of the naming of the assessment, it is a prescribed term used in Welsh Government. And when we sort of look at identifying different demographic groups and groups with protected characteristics, the Gypsy Traveller community is a group people do associate as members of it, being members of a Gypsy Traveller group. So you know, it's language that has been used previously, and people do seem to understand that term. So yeah, in terms of the engagement on the sites, yeah, the reason some of the travellers on Hayes Roads specifically noted in their return was more about distrust of authority and historical distrust of the process, and maybe a feeling that their voices haven't been heard correctly in the past. So it is quite difficult to engage with residents, and I know from conversations recently with colleagues in the police who've tried some outreach work to speak to members of the community down there. And people who are in specialist roles who've had some success in Cardiff found it very difficult to get to speak to people there. And when they did speak to people, there was a lot of distrust, and it was very difficult. So that's something that's developed over a period of time, I think, for a variety of reasons. But as far as I'm aware, not because of the terminology that's used, because that is widespread terminology that is used when talking about this specific community.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Chair. More sort of an observation rather than any questions, but I welcome this report, that is going to go to Welsh Government, and the, sort of the work undertaken to calculate the future sort of need that we have for making sure that there's gypsy traveller sites available for the people wanting to sort of live in the Vale, visit the Vale. Also, the retrospective planning for is it 2 sites? I could have got that wrong, Marcus, for Brocastle and Tinnerodin. I welcome that we are going to have sort of where they've got hopefully have the planning there if it gets passed in the future. What I would also like to say as an observation, and being somebody who has had a very limited experience of meeting people from the gypsy traveller community, the level of discrimination that they actually face is widespread. And I think to suggest that a community, of residents would be that there should be security on a site because the local residents are fearful. I don't think that that's right. I really find that quite offensive. I think the security might be there for the gypsy travellers who face the discrimination in the first place. Also, having sort of worked in Tremorfa, where I think the Gypsy Traveller, the advisory organisation is, hearing stories that they've faced of discrimination when going for housing or different things like that. We're going to shops, trying to organise things. And that was just passing conversation that I'd heard, besides being in a pub in the East End where gypsy travellers, they actually called the police and had them removed. So they do face a great deal of discrimination by the wider community. And I find, some of the comments that have been made quite offensive, actually. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry if I've taken things on a different track, but thank you.
I can see Councillor Burnett is waiting, but we do have another committee member wanting to speak before I bring Councillor Burnett in.
Chair, I'm actually speaking as Cabinet member on this, as I took this this report to Cabinet.
Ah, okay. Yes, apologies. Yes, my mind went blank there. Okay, Councillor Burnett, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, this is a report as required by Welsh Government. We forward plan for an awful lot of our services. You'll see from the replacement LDP that we're forward planning the types of houses, where they should be, what sort of provision we're having, and the Gypsy Traveller Assessment is a similar type of report where we are reporting into Welsh Government. And in there, if you actually look at the report, it talks about the fact that this is about meeting need by expanding existing sites to cater for people who are growing to adulthood and want to remain within their communities. To start having things about local people might object to something like this, actually I find that deeply disturbing. These are people that are settled within their communities. And I might, I stand to be corrected. I am not aware of any issue whatsoever in any of our gypsy traveller communities anywhere in the Vale. And I think that it is beholden upon us as elected members to reassure people that there are processes, that this is a report that is required to make sure that we have the right sort of facilities for all our residents within the Vale, and that the correct processes will go through, and that as it develops, if we are their ward members, we will ensure that they are kept informed. But some of the language I've heard today, it might be worth going back and listening. I felt deeply uncomfortable, and I just wanted that noted, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burnett. Sorry, Marcus, if you'd like to come in, I can see you've been waiting.
That's fine, Chair. Thank you for that. It was just to clarify on the two sites that Councillor Perks referred to, which is the Tinnerodden site and the site. Which was the other site? I'm sorry, my mind's gone blank as well. Brocastle. So the Tinnerodden site was the subject of an appeal back in 2013, following actually a refusal of planning permission. That appeal allowed the site, but with a temporary consent on the basis that the council was at that time seeking to resolve the situation of a long-term solution. We have remained in consultation and conversation with the site owners, who are in fact site owners, and purchased the site and got the planning permission for it. They haven't actually renewed the permission yet, although we understand they are in the process of considering that following some contact from us. But it's fair to say that process, for example, was completely followed through in 2013, and that consultations went on and the planning process was followed. Likewise, in Brocastle, actually planning permission was applied for before the current residents got on the site. But in that case, what has held up the determination is information around the proposed foul sewage and drainage of the site. It is a technical issue, one we're hoping will be resolved relatively soon, but again that has gone through the planning process, if you like, in a very thorough way, and there have been consultations with the communities that surround there, but as likewise it is hopefully to be resolved fairly shortly. So those are, while you know, I heard the term unauthorized development, I think it's fair to say that these developments were to a certain extent unauthorized because they eventually were occupied after planning permission had been granted, particularly with Brocastle, but actually the planning permission was applied for before the site was occupied. So just wanted to clarify that.
Councillor Morgan.
Okay, thank you, Nick, for the report. My observations are simply that it's a shame that perhaps we don't have better communication with the gypsy and traveller community. We're all discussing their best interests, I hope, at the moment, but we don't have anybody here from those communities to put their case, if you like. It'd be good if we could arrange some kind of dialogue of that nature. And I know a good number of families in the gypsy community. They have strong family bonds. They look after their own. They're proud to be called gypsies, to be honest, those that I know. So it's wrong to describe it as a derogatory term, but I think we acknowledge that they live with us in the Vale of Glamorgan community. And it would be nice if we could find a way to engage with them, rather than what sometimes might be perceived as us and them. You know, we're all in this together, all different, but if we can improve the accommodation that's available to them and make it regulated and acceptable, then that has to be the aim, I think, really. But so my question is, can we find a way of engaging in a more positive, proactive way with members of that community?
Yeah, Councillor, I'd love to say yes, that would be possible or achievable, but I think they point out really there's quite a lot of history here in terms of engagement with the travellers, and whilst it would be great to get them on board, and attempts have been made recently as part of this process. If I'm being realistic and honest, it's going to prove quite difficult, really, and it has proved quite difficult. And I think specifically when they returned the surveys from the Hayes Road site, they said that they refused to cooperate with future surveys. So it is a tricky one given where we are at this point, really. There may be opportunities to engage with gypsies and travellers from other sites, but when these pieces of work are carried out, the ideal is to have somebody from the community on the steering group and providing direct information. But it wasn't possible. There is a lot of distrust, it would seem. Some of the points councillors have made are probably some of the reasons for that. But yeah, it's not been possible up to this point, and whilst further efforts can be made, and we can use liaison organisations like Gypsy Traveller Wales. Being realistic, I think it's quite tricky given the history to engage some of these groups.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Mike, you were going to say something? Okay, Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to respond to the comments from Councillors Burnett and Perks, because I took it that they were directed at my contribution. To be clear, I wasn't referring to any specific or particular site. It was more about the policy more generally. And Councillor Burnett referred to the processes involved and reassuring residents. That's exactly why I raised the points that I did, because the whole purpose of involving residents in this process is to avoid the inflammatory or potential inflammatory situations and language to which she referred.
Okay, Councillor Hanks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say really that over the years we've spent quite a long time discussing this topic, and I welcome the comprehensive report that we've had done by Opinion Research Services, and I think it's a real good positive step forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lovelock Edwards. You're muted, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, taking all of the points into consideration, I think we all agree it's an assessment, and as already been noted, this document will now go on to the Welsh Government, and then it'll come back to the LD and form part of the LDP. So the consultation process will start there. So I think we've all had an echo Councillor Hanks' comment that this has been a matter that's been discussed for a number of years. This is an assessment. It's not a consultation document per se, and I think we now need to move to perhaps, sort of noting the document, thanking the officers and moving on to accepting it's an assessment and it needs to go to Welsh Government. And I'm sure that this group would look at the recommendations and await feedback eagerly from Welsh Government on the assessment.
Councillor Lovelock Edwards, you took the words out of my mouth.
Thank you, Chair.
Great minds
I'm
think
saving
alike.
you. I'm saving your throat, Chair. Saving your throat.
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate, this is an assessment. It's not final yet. Okay. I suggest now, if no one else would like to speak, I suggest now that we move and note this report. Is everybody happy to do so?
Yes, Chair.
Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Just to clarify, Chair, as well as noting the report, just the committee's agreement to submit the assessment to Welsh Government following
Oh,
this as
yes.
well. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Just for the purpose of the minutes
Okay.
and the recording, that's all. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, committee.
Okay, so agenda item 5 is the budget 2023 to 24 for consultation and further MTFP update. Again, this went to Cabinet on the 19th of January 2023.
Thank you,
Laura.
Chair. I'll
Yes.
take that one. Yes, thank you. Sorry, from one croaky voice to another. I'm afraid I've got a little something as well, so apologies if I lose it a little. Evening, everyone. I've got three references from Cabinet, as Chair says, and because the references are obviously council-wide, what we've done is kind of tailor the reports for each scrutiny. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share a slideshow that kind of concentrates the mind, if you like, to issues that are more relevant to this scrutiny committee. So I'll just share that.
Right, that's come on, Laura, just to confirm.
Yeah, got it. Lovely. Okay, so oh, I won't do that. Sorry, bear with. I was just going to move it. So the first one then is the revenue budget proposals for 23-24. And let's start with some good news. The settlement from Welsh Government for next year was actually more favourable than we had anticipated in the October paper that we brought to Scrutiny and Cabinet before Christmas on the financial strategy and the medium-term financial plan. There was positive settlement for Wales, and of the £644 million that came to Wales, 227 million of it was directed to local government, which was a 7.9% increase on what we had assumed in the October paper. So that was good news. As for the Vale itself, the aggregate external finance, AEF, funding from Welsh Government, if you like, will increase by 8.9%, which equates to £16.6 million, which again is an improvement of £10 million over the October paper. And the Vale's standard spending assessment, SSA, is 6.4%, while the Wales average was 6.2%. So again, slightly more favourable than it has been in the past. So in October, the financial strategy was projecting a £28.2 million funding gap, having assumed a 3.5% increase in AEF and a council tax increase of 3.99%. This improved settlement from Welsh Government of 16.6 million plus a proposed 4.9% council tax increase of 4.2 million increases the total funding available by just under £21 million, but there still remains a gap. The council has worked as SLT senior leadership team level to revise cost pressures down. So directors, directorates submit cost pressures or increased costs that they anticipate for future years back in September. And at that point, cost pressures were £38 million. They've been reduced now as part of this exercise to try and reduce the funding gap from 38 million down to 30.67 million pounds. And of this 30 million, 15 of it equates to pay and energy pressures, which obviously are nationwide. So everyone's heard of the issues that everybody's having with pay and energy inflation. And specifically for this committee, homelessness obviously is a continued pressure and is an element of the cost pressure submitted, as are the pressures around the placement of Ukrainian refugees. So this is a table on the updated funding gap. So the £30 million cost pressures, which I just mentioned then in the last slide, are broken down here for 23-24, £30 million pressures. The additional funding from various sources equated to 24.6 million, which left a funding gap of just over 6 million for 23-24. Again, scrutiny specific cost pressures. So of that large report that you've been presented, there are 4 cost pressures that actually relate to this committee. the cost of bed and breakfast, homelessness accommodation, which, as you can see, is a massive pressure, one of the largest that was submitted, has actually been alleviated slightly since this report was written and taken, in that Welsh Government more grant for next year. So the good news is that that figure will reduce, although it may just move the issue forward rather than actually fund it completely. It might just reprofile that cost pressure a little. Again, as mentioned, the Ukrainian refugee crisis, there was a cost pressure approved of 250,000 for that. Again, there may be an issue with reprofiling that one, moving that one forward a year if that pressure isn't needed for next year. CCTV, £150,000. So, sorry. Oh, sorry, it's going. Councillors are aware that obviously we've had about £350,000. Sorry. Oh, my voice is gone. I'm so sorry. Apologies. We had £350,000 capital money for new CCTV equipment a couple of years ago. That's now being paid. Oh, I'm so sorry. But this element, this cost pressure, is to fund the monitoring system, which we're sharing with Cardiff Council. So this element is to fund the monitoring service ongoing on a revenue basis. The last one is a new post for private rented coordinator support and support for new temporary accommodation property. So it's literally to get a post in place to identify new private landlords to increase the provision available. So, as I say, other than possibly reprofiling, sorry, Matt, did you want to come in?
Sorry, I'm muted. Shall I carry on? If I talk through the slides, but you've got the slide deck, Laura. So if you flick through them, and I'll tell you when, and hopefully your voice, let's give your voice a break for a couple of moments. I can't say pop off and get a glass of water because I need you to keep doing the slides. Sorry.
Absolutely, sorry, apologies.
So the last cost pressure that's relevant to this scrutiny committee is the private rented coordinator support post, and there's additional support being identified for private rental sector landlords, and that would assist the local authority meeting its duties to maximise the use of that sector, and that's £30,000. So if we go on to the savings, so colleagues will probably recall, as part of the budget strategy back in October, we put a savings framework forward to help colleagues come forward with savings proposals. We looked across 10 broad themes, and those are on this slide. I'm not going to read them out, but they are set in the report as well. If we move on to slide 9, there are 4 savings proposals out of the total of £6 million of savings of efficiency at a council level that fall in the remit of this committee. So the first is a budget adjustment, and that's in respect of the pre-tenancy advisor and that's budget, that's 26k. Second one is review senior officer recharges to the HRA to ensure no cross subsidisation. So we're just having a general review of the charges that are made to the HRA. Community safety, there's a review of support function, and that's the possible deletion of a vacant post. And then in private housing, this increased disabled facilities grant provision, removal of means testing, and that will bring in a further 20k of income. So those are the savings. A key element of the budget strategy this year has been a thorough review of all our reserves. They've needed a thorough overhaul, and I guess that's because the way in which the world has changed so dramatically in the last 18 months, couple of years. So they've needed realignment with the council's current risks. So there's especially movement into a pay pressures reserve, energy pressures, corporate landlord, general investment and digital strategy, and that involves centralising some of what were previously directorate specific reserves. And I guess relevant for this, well, actually it's later in the slide, I'll come back in a moment. We've also, we've started reporting on reserves in the monitoring report to have greater visibility and understanding of those reserves. And as part of this exercise, we have streamlined them somewhat as well, and that will help with the reporting and monitoring. The processes around approving specific use have been robust and have been fine, but we've just tightened those up a little bit as well. So there are a couple of reserves that we've set up purely for the purpose of smoothing some of the expenditure pressures that we're experiencing at this time and believe that could be one-off spikes or transitory in nature. And the homelessness and energy costs are a couple of examples of that. Mike Ingram and Nick Jones and colleagues are putting together a homelessness strategy that will be looking at increasing capacity for homelessness in the Vale over the next couple of years. And as that provision comes on stream, then the pressures that we're recognising in this budget will ease off. So we're smoothing some of those out. And the benefit of that is that we're not needing to make a greater number of savings across the whole council. There's a similar approach with energy costs. And as part of our overall strategy to push some of the costs down from the 38 million to the 30 that's now in front of us, we've phased some pressures across 2 years in respect of social services, and there was a couple of £1 million adjustment there. And reserves are forecast to reduce somewhat by the end of this financial year, and the full report sets out a profile of those reserves over the next 5. If we do slide 11, I think that's possibly might be the last one on the budget. So obviously these proposals initially came to Cabinet on the 19th. It's the budget for consultation. So we launched the consultation the following day, and that runs for a 4-week period. As said in some of the briefings, ideally we'd have had a longer period of consultation, but given the timing of the settlement and the uncertainty of the funding, we couldn't really go out to consultation earlier than that because we didn't have any robust proposals to do so. We're meeting all 5 scrutiny committees over the next fortnight, and that will culminate with corporate performance and resources scrutiny, and that will feed all of the comments of the various scrutiny committees through back to Cabinet, who meet on Monday, Monday for a change, Monday the 27th of February. Final settlement, you know, the numbers that we've just seen from government in this report are provisional, so it's the provisional Welsh Government settlement on the 16th settlement of December rather. The final settlement is due. I think that might be a mistake when that's in all our slides. I think the 4th of March is a Saturday. Hopefully we'll have it on the Friday. And then we'll take the final proposals to council on the 6th of March. So we'll pause there for doing the next slide. I think it's just, yes, yeah. So open to questions, please.
Thank you very much, Matt and Laura. I hope you're feeling better now, Laura. Yeah, well done for struggling through as far as you did. Do we have any questions? Oh yes, Councillor Perks, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the reserves, and the only bit that I wanted to ask, if Ofgem are going to be making a decision on energy pricing soon, will that have a, if it lowers the cost of energy, will that have a positive effect on the reserves or the cost pressures of reserves?
Yeah, it's fair to say that the numbers of that we're forecasting for the energy pressures have been up and down, mainly up since we put the strategy forward back in October. They did go up a little bit, they've come back down, so they're very volatile. So we're reviewing that. But certainly it will take, if they are to come down, then that would take some pressure off the council's budget.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I don't see any further questions. All right, so are members happy to move and note the report?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
I'll second, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6 is the Vale of Glamorgan Council proposed fees and charges for 2023 to 2024. Again, went to Cabinet on the 19th of January 2023. This again is Laura and Matt. So whoever wants to take it, go ahead.
Do you want me to continue, Laura, or you?
Shall I try it? And
yeah,
be there
you
just
start,
in case.
Pick your hand up if you need me to come back in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the second of 3 references. So this is a consolidated fees and charges report which covers the whole council. So neighbourhood services, resources, place, learning and skills and social services. The majority of proposed fees and charges reflect an increase of between 5 and 11%. Obviously, inflation's running around 10% at the moment, so the vast majority are somewhere within that realm. And obviously, the fees and charges increase are another element of trying to plug that funding gap that I mentioned in the last report. The good news, I suppose, as far as this committee goes, is that although it's quite a lengthy report and quite a large appendix on there, there are no specific fees and charges that fall within the remit of this committee. So it's for note, probably, if nothing else, this report. So again, next steps. This is where we are in scrutiny consultation at the moment. Any comments, should you have any? We'll go to corporate performance and resources in readiness for the final proposals report to Cabinet on the 27th of Feb. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I realise a lot of the report doesn't come within the remit of this committee, but just 2 things came out at me. The first is parking charges at our beaches and in our country parks. I don't think we should really be touching those at the moment when people need to get out and enjoy those facilities. And similarly, some quite dramatic increases in cafes putting their chairs and tables outside. Again, I don't think we should touch those. Yes, the cafes might profit commercially from having these facilities, but they are facilities which improve the quality of life for all of us. So those 2 things, I just might like to make that comment. Can we just leave those alone for this time?
Okay. Councillor Morgan, I think regarding those comments, it may be an idea to forward those to the chair of the relevant scrutiny committee as well. Okay, just as this would obviously be discussed in their committee as well.
Can I
Okay.
just say very quickly,
Yeah.
Chair, I think that would probably be environment and regeneration.
Yes.
So they might be
that's,
worth perhaps raising it at that committee, because obviously
Yeah.
this report will go to them, and that specifically falls within their remit. So
Yeah.
obviously that might be useful comments for them to pick up if they want and pass on to Court Performance Resources.
I also believe as well that those two particular items are going to be discussed anyway by members of that committee, because there's been a lot of feedback on the both of them, especially the fees on tables outside cafes. So I would imagine that would get discussed in more in depth at that committee. Okay. Councillor Perks, sorry, Councillor Lovelock Edwards was first. I see. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I wanted to put a comment in terms of the Councillor Morgan has said, and that it's important that we look at sort of not the percentage increase, but sort of how the pay, sort of the financial impact, and break that down. And I think that that's where we have to sort of use a common sense approach. And whilst I accept his comments, I suppose I'm putting forward a sort of a different perspective, in that as looking at that document in totality, it's not just been a snap decision. There's been clearly a considerable amount of discussion, and there's clearly been sort of some discussion in terms of whether, you know, sort of what to do or not. And it's evident that the changes that are and the fees and charges that are being proposed are being proposed with good reason. And if you break it down in terms of that monetary value, then I suppose there's an argument that it's not the sort of inflammatory sort of increase that is being sort of cited on social media at this moment in time. And I think we have to bear in mind that, and we have to be very mindful of the language that we use in putting forward any recommendations or any comments to the Corporate Performance and Resources.
Councillor Perks.
As chair of ENR, I welcome any councillor who wants to come along and speak and put your thoughts forward, or you know, ensure that your thoughts are relayed at that committee. So thank you.
Councillor Perks, you may see me there. Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Lovelock Edwards, you still have your hand's just gone down. Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak? No. Okay, so our cabinet happy to move and note that, but also for any suggestions or comments that we've made to be sent on to corporate performance. Councillor Campbell.
Sorry if this sounds like a little bit of a stupid question, but if this is kind of nothing to do with us, why are we looking at it?
Because it's going to all scrutiny committees.
Okay, so it's just like a formality type thing.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Okay. So to repeat, our committee happy for me to our committee happy to move and note the report with any comments made being passed on.
Yes, Chair.
Yep. And we got seconder.
I'll
Happy to
second,
second, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Just to check, Chair, obviously because we've not had any comments specific to the remit of the committee on this, realistically we're probably just moving and noting on this. And obviously the comments, for example, that have been raised by Councillor Morgan, probably better place to go to ENR in order for them, you know, if they so choose to go to Corporate Performance and Resources.
Okay, if you think that would be best, yes. Okay.
Unless any other members have any comments, specific to the remit of the committee they want to pass on. If not, it would be just moving a note in.
Happy to move a note, Chair.
Okay, I think we are just moving and noting then. Thank you very much. Before we come on to agenda item 7, I do want to just advise committee that following discussions with Democratic Services and the finance officers, it's been agreed to move agenda item 11 on the order to follow after agenda item 7. Okay, so we'll go 7, 11, then 8 and 8, then 8 onwards. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 7 is the draft capital programme proposals 2023 to 2024 to 2027 to 2028. Again, a reference from Cabinet on the 19th of January.
Thank you, Chair. So draft capital, so similar to the draft revenue report that we put through, there's also an equivalent for the capital programme strategy. Although the difference is that covers 5 years. So Welsh Government in their provisional settlement awarded us £6.997 million funding, split pretty much evenly between grant and supported borrowing. This is an increase of 1.1 million, just over, from this year's settlement. And last year's 21-22 was a similar figure of 6.8 million. So not quite the good news that we had on revenue, but still in the realms of what we were expecting. In addition, Welsh Government have also advised that there's some £20 million for Wales to enable us to have a look at the decarbonisation issue that everyone is facing. But at the moment, we don't know what that actually means for the Vale, but 20 million across Wales. Welsh Government have also confirmed that the general capital funding of 6.997 will remain the same for 24-25, so a year on from where we will be in April, but nothing beyond that. So the table in this slide here shows the anticipated funding that we'll receive for the next 5 years. So we know that these two are fairly certain. Obviously, beyond that is an estimation. This is quite a high level slide, but it's a 5-year programme across the departments. And I've just highlighted, obviously, housing. The bulk of the capital spend for this committee is included in this budget here. Environment and housing. 167 million from this line relates to the housing improvement programme. I'd say it's fairly high level. On the funding for that whole programme, it's split between funding from general fund, general capital grant funding, various reserves, HRA and general fund, capital receipts, various grants and section 106 funding of just over 74.5 million for 23-24. And in order to fund that, we need £23.7 million worth of borrowing, again split over general fund and HRA, to come to the total programme value for 23-24 at least of £98 million. New schemes included in that 5-year programme are listed on this slide. Fairly large sums. The only one that relates to this committee I've highlighted here is in red, which is match funding for an empty home scheme grant. So Welsh Government are providing a fairly healthy grant that we need to provide match funding towards of £85,000. So that's included in the programme for next year. Then we're on to timetable and next steps. So again, we're in scrutiny consultation in Feb, final proposals to Cabinet 27th of Feb, final settlement due from Welsh Government 3rd of March, hopefully that's the right date, Matt, final proposals to council 6th of March 2023. Any questions?
I don't see anybody with their hands up. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. Our committee happy to move and note of the report? Councillor Morgan.
Okay. Just a very quick one on the public consultation. I mean, where's that taking place? I haven't seen anything myself. Is it in the press or where do the public find out about this?
It's on the council's website, and there've been a number of press releases on it and social media posts as well. So a variety of sources.
No, so I've missed it somehow. So perhaps a lot of other people might have missed it as well.
What we can certainly do after this meeting is...
I know. I think it's a great difficulty, I know, in getting information out there and getting people to respond. And I'm not. This is not a criticism. People just don't respond, and I don't know what the answer is.
We have had about just short of 600 responses to date.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I don't see anybody with their hands up, so I will ask whether committee are happy to move and note the report.
Happy to move and note, Chair.
Seconder?
Happy to second it, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so as advised, we will now be going to agenda item 11A, which is... Sorry, hang on.
Chair, would you like me to take over for this section? Are you okay?
If you could take over, please. Sorry.
Okay. As councillor, can everyone hear me? Yeah, as Councillor Collins said, we're now just taking item 11. Just bear with me. Mark, who do we have for that? Is that Matt and Laura again?
No, in this case, I believe, Nick, is this going to be presented by Andrew?
Sorry, Andrew.
This will be me.
Thanks,
thank
Andrew.
you very much. Good evening, everybody. May I say thank you very much for agreeing to take this as an urgent item through this scrutiny committee. The timetable for turning around this document is extremely tight. The guidance from Welsh Government only came out just before Christmas, and it has to be lodged with Welsh Government at the end of March, going through Council and Cabinet, and obviously trying to pass scrutiny on the way through. The document sets out the 30-year investment programme for the council's housing stock, and covers everything from WHQS, WHQS2, which is due to be released this year, the council's housing development programme, maintaining the existing housing stock, and anything else in between. As you probably appreciate, it amounts to a considerable investment, and the document sets out how that investment will actually be maintained. Currently, the council is at maintenance phase of WHQS phase 1. WHQS 23, which is due to be released this year, actually starts to look at some of the impact on carbon reduction within the council's housing stock, and taking through to a deadline of 2023 for EPC Band A properties. And as I say, at the same time trying to meet some of the development programmes to increase council housing as well as maintain our existing stock. that's pretty much a flavour for the report. So I'm quite happy to take questions should any arise. I see something's appeared in the chat bar. That's nothing to do with the report.
That was me thanking Belinda for stepping
Okay.
in just then. Apologies for the coughing
No,
fit.
So, sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to question you.
no,
Chair, do you
I'm
want-
just checking there's no questions appearing there.
Belinda, if you would
no,
like,
no,
if you
we
want
wouldn't.
to, you can take the rest of this item, or would you like me
Yeah.
to go back in?
No, if you're happy, Chair, I'm just mindful of looking after yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, do we have any questions on that? Again, I don't see any questions.
No, don't see anything, Chair.
No questions or comments. Thank you everybody for your work on these reports. But as we don't have any comments or questions, I'm going to ask committee if they're happy to move and note the reports.
Happy to move and note, Chair.
Okay, and do we have a seconder?
Happy to second it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you guys for coming today. You can stick around or you can go. It's up to you. All right, so we've now got agenda item 8, which is the capital monitoring for period 1st of April to 30th of November, and that will be Laura and Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Again, if I could share my screen for the
Of
slide, if
course.
that's okay.
Yes.
So the first one is the capital budget monitoring for the period April to November 22. And there is just some, again, this is tailored to this this committee. So there are some changes, some movements. 2 change requests, which are both slippages or carried forward into the 23-24 programme. One is under the social services banner for the YOS building at Salisbury Road, where they're asking to slip £15,000 of external repairs through to next year. And a figure of £5,000 in the place budget for the Penarth renewal area also being requested to slip through to next year. Delegated authority, which is basically approval by the leader and chief executive, various senior officers, has been approved for the housing improvement programme, and they've carried forward, so that's automatically been approved to be slipped into next year. Some £4.5 million from the housing improvement programme has been slipped into 23-24. And it's, as it says there, due to delays in planning decisions and procurement, which has been impacted by staff shortages within the division. And I've just summarised, it might be a little small, sorry, I've summarised from the appendix from the Cabinet report, the capital projects that are actually related to this committee. So there's the Salisbury Road slippage 15,000 request for next year. The items I've highlighted in blue there are the £4.5 million on the housing improvement programme being slipped through. CCTV, which I mentioned on the first report when I mentioned cost pressures. This is the capital budget for the new cameras, £300,000. And then the last one there is within place is the private housing enable disabled facilities grants, and then the Penarth renewal area, that £5,000, which has been requested to be slipped. As far as significant project progress, there's one that's been highlighted for for this committee, which is again part of the housing improvement programme. New builds, and there's a list there of 138 new council homes that are due to be developed as part of that new build capital budget, and they're all listed there. Thank you. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions or comments? I don't see any hands going up. I don't see anything new in the chat. Okay. There are 4 recommendations to this. Our committee happy to accept these recommendations?
Yes, Chair.
Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so we've accepted the recommendations and removing and noting. Everybody happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 9 now is the is the revenue monitoring report for the period 1st of April to 30th of November 2022. Again, that is Laura and Matt.
Thank you, Chair. This is a nice short one. So revenue position as at 30th of November covers April to November. Again, tying the report into this committee only. The report details revised budgets when various transfers have been made for internal recharges, if you like, insurance, IT licenses, and there's also been some budget transfers within place because of a kind of mini restructure as place has been developed. And the headline for services within this committee: Youth Offending Service is reporting an underspend by year end of around £100,000, which is due to staff vacancies within the service as well as additional income. And it's going to be requested that that be transferred into a social service reserve at the end of the year if it stays at 100k. Council Fund Housing is reporting the pressure on lack of rental income at Cadoxton House because it's in a state of flux at the moment with not many tenants and what is happening with the future of Cadoxton House. So at the moment, the rental income is down on that budget. And there's also an issue, obviously, with funding the homeless provision and the homelessness costs following COVID grants mostly being, or entirely, in fact, COVID grants being withdrawn, as well as an unbudgeted element of pay award for 22-23. The HRA public sector housing budget is expected to outturn on target, but any under overspends within the year will be offset by any change to unsupported borrowing because of spend on the capital programme, and that's the way the capital programme is mostly funded for the HRA. Private housing has highlighted pressures on the disabled facilities grant income budget and the unbudgeted element of the pay award. So there is a possibility that reserves will be needed to be drawn down for that service in order for that one to break even. The regulatory services at this stage are projecting to be to outturn on target. But as I always say, this isn't the shared regulatory service. This is the Vale's contribution towards that service. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you for that, Laura. Do committee have any comments or questions? I'm not seeing anybody wanting to speak. There are 3 recommendations with this. Are our committee happy to go with these recommendations to accept them?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, are we happy to approve the amended revenue budget? Sorry.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, that is the one of the recommendations. So we're happy to move a note.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for these reports, Laura and Matt. I don't think we've got you down for anything else, have we, tonight? So if you like, you can stick around. If not, you can go and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Agenda item 10 is the third quarter scrutiny recommendation tracking an updated committee forward work programme, and this will be taken by Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. This is our regular quarterly report, the purpose of which is to report progress on scrutiny recommendations and to consider the updated forward work programme together with any slippages for the year 22-23. In terms of sort of the summary of the report advises members of progress in relation to the Scrutiny Committee's historical recommendations and the updated forward work programme schedule for 22-23. We have a number of appendices to the report. Appendices A through to C regard the recommendation tracking, and Appendix D is our updated forward work programme for 22-23. In essence, we're asking committee that they ask for that the status of the actions listed in appendices A to C to the report be agreed, and that the updated forward work programme schedule for 22-23 attached to Appendix D be approved and uploaded to the council's website. Just to make the committee aware in terms of key issues for consideration, for appendices A to C, obviously they set out a number of previous recommendations that the committee have had in terms of reports. Pleased to note that for Q3, which is October to December, and that relates to Appendix C, these recommendations or actions have been now completed. In terms of Appendix A, which is the 2019 to 2020 incomplete recommendations, that's primarily around the Gypsy and Traveller obviously report, which we've had an iteration of that for tonight's meeting, so that is still ongoing until obviously we get further reports or actions back. Appendix B, 21 to 22. The main incomplete recommendation there is around the domestic abuse reports that we've had previously. And just to make committee aware, there will be further progress on that. What we intend to do after discussions with the housing team is to look at a possible presentation from Atul of Row about obviously increased survivor engagement with survivors of domestic abuse, and also a further report on the domestic abuse programme to be provided to committee in due course. Also, we have Appendix D, which is our forward work programme. That gives a forward work programme for between the periods of May to April, so May 2022 to April 2023. And that just gives committee an update on where we are in terms of those reports and any slippages that have been detailed during the course of the year. And that basically, Chair, is in a nutshell. Sorry, apologies. The forward work programme covers from June 2022 because obviously we had the election in May 22 up until April 2023. And as I said, that details what reports have come through to committee and any updates in terms of any reports that have been had to slip and any reports that have been added. What I will ask committee as well to consider, because we've obviously had the urgent item now around the HRA business plan, that that if committee are happy before we upload onto the website, we will add that onto February's list of reports. It's currently, I believe, in March's, so we'll move that before we upload it if to the Avail website if committee agrees. So that's it in a nutshell, Chair, and obviously I'll take any questions or comments that the committee wish to ask.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Councillor Hanks.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, Appendix C, it says the status of the CCTV update will be amended on the work programme to reference that it will be provided to the committee in the near future. We had tentatively agreed that that would be done before Christmas, and that hasn't been done. Do you know when that presentation might be available?
Bear with me, Chair. I'll double check. I mean, obviously, we have had some further updates around the CCTV programme. As you're aware, we had the community safety team or the Safer Vale Partnerships report, I believe in January, which did mention some of the work around CCTV. We've also had a few other updates, I think, on related reports. I'm not sure, Nick, in terms of obviously from your team, is there anything that we can add on at the moment?
No, I don't think so, Mark. It's just
Yeah.
in the programme. But what I can do outside of this meeting is talk to the manager from the Safer Vale Partnership just to see what information is coming back and when and liaise with yourself to get it on the agendas, really.
Okay. But also there is on the forward work programme there has been suggestion about as well as the further updates in terms of reports or presentations about a possible committee visit as well to the new CCTV centre, but obviously that's to be confirmed at this time. So obviously, Nick, if you speak to Manager Safer Vale, that if you've got any updates around that as well, I can feed back to the committee and update the work programme. That'd be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Councillor.
Okay, anybody else wish to? Councillor Ludlow-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarification. In Appendix D, Mark, there's an item, community investment strategy. And I obviously, as a new councillor, the last presentation came out in November 21, and you're looking at collating a new draft to come to committee in April. Is there a means in which I can look at the previous presentation report?
Yeah, Chair. Yes, Vice Chair. Sorry. On the electronic version of this work programme, a lot of these reports, like for example, this one, last presentation report was in November 2020, when there is a hyperlink, you can click on that and access it. But obviously, if you get any problems with that, then please do let me know and I can forward you either a copy of the document or a hyperlink outside the table if you do come across any problems. But if you use the electronic version, you can click on that link and it should take you straight away to that previous version of the report or presentation.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks for that.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak or make a comment? Ask a question or make a comment? Okay, are committee happy to move and note these reports with the amendment that Mark suggested with the HRA being added to the February reports?
Yes, Chair.
Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mark, is there, I don't think there's anything else on the agenda now, is there? You're muted, Mark.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'll just double check, but I believe we've covered all the items for tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
There've been obviously the last report that we had, the Court of Scrutiny recommendation track name was the last report. So that is everything, Chair. Obviously, there's any items which the Chair has decided are urgent for part 2, but tonight we don't have any. We've only had the part 1 to do with the HRA business plan.
Okay, then thank you very much, Mark. Or all that's left for me to say then is to say thank you everybody for being here and giving up your time. The next meeting, I believe, is the 8th of March.
Yeah, that's correct,
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay, so the date of the next meeting is the 8th of March. Thank you, everybody. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for
Chair.
putting up with me.
Take care.
Chair.
Get well
Bye
soon,
all.
Chair.
Thanks,
Get
everyone.
well.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye.
Get well soon, Millie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Mark, do you want me to stick on?